Okay, very good. It's important that the chief technical officer know how to push a button within an organization. I don't always succeed at that. Often I fail, but today it looks like we're going to be all right. I don't really consider myself to be a technical person, so sometimes I'm a little embarrassed by the title, and I often don't use it. What I tend to say to people is that I influence the direction that our company takes in deploying technology. I don't really do anything, I just influence. But Robinson, and I think perhaps this is why Jared and TriNimbus asked us to talk, I think we're a really good example of mid-sized businesses' use of cloud. It's been an interesting collision, because we do real-world work out in the field. Robinson operates inside auto plants, General Motors, Toyota, BMW. We push brooms, drive lift trucks, move material around, repair things. So blue-collar work. So what does that have to do with the cloud in the scheme of things? Across North America, these auto plants have been around for 100 years. So they're kind of this old glacial type of technology environment to operate within. The challenge for Robinson is the scale of these things. They're so big. Has anybody ever been inside an auto plant? Anybody yeah, right? It's pretty big. Steel plants maybe are in the same scale, but they're one of the largest type of physical infrastructures out there. There's a picture of Oshawa in here. It's 15 million square feet. That's bigger than the Eaton Center, right? Like, this is a big deal. The challenge is when we're trying to operate across these environments is how do we connect our people? How do we operate in a unified fashion? How does our president convey some sort of strategy that gets deployed right down to the street level? So connection is a big challenge. But we're very lucky because we're outsiders operating inside world-class facilities and operations. And we're there every day. So it's a very fortunate position for me to have been in over the years. I started with Robinson 95, I think, might be 96, but definitely pre-Google and post-DOS. Does anybody know what DOS is? There's a bit of gray hair in here, so I think some of these people know DOS. I did install DOS for Robinson, so I've been around that way. If we push the button and it moves forward. This is from a recent presentation, and I had forgotten about this. This is 1999 to 2002 range, what we were deploying in an attempt to connect our people. And we look at this now in our 2016 brains, and it's not such a big deal. But back then, it was a really big deal because we were dealing with Internet Explorer version 3, I think it was, right, in the scheme of things. I was having, in order to get this used across the organization, have to put in modem cards and dial-up modems and connections and those type of things. So I guess what I want to kind of convey is, wow, a lot's been going on over the years, and there's been a lot of very exciting moments and transitions. But I have a little inkling that what's going on right now is a generational wow. This is even bigger than some of the pieces we did here. What I think is kind of fun in this picture, does anybody remember the Palm Pilot? We all look at that with nostalgia, and I almost want to buy one just because I miss it in the scheme of things. This is a little more about Robinson here, just to give you a bit of insight into how we've operated at the business level. After working on connecting some of our people in the different types of auto plants, we got an opportunity from Goodyear to do pre-weighment of chemicals that are used in the production of tires. And this was a very entertaining, interesting, challenging opportunity because it's a bit of a dark art. It's almost like a cake mix of chemicals that are tweaked and assembled that get thrown into each tire as it's being produced in the scheme of things. But with pre-weigh, what was very interesting is it's what we call a greenfield deployment. We built this plant in order to outsource the production that was in 3 different Goodyear facilities. The challenge with that is that if you were a Goodyear person, you used to be able to go down to the pre-weigh and say, hey, George, I need you to tweak that because I'm running some tires today, and you could poke the guy and physically go visit him. When we externalize that and remove it, all of a sudden it's not in the building, and you have to have this tight integration, this lean method of operating in order to meet the needs of Goodyear. The pre-weigh project took all the materials and the approaches that we had done with the web, and it provided this kind of portal interface that directly impacts the controls of the pre-weigh plant. So 3 different Goodyear tire facilities. There's a team of compounders in each of them. Compounders are like these chemical guys. If they change a recipe via the web browser, our production equipment will automatically adapt to that recipe change. So they're not physically in the plant, but they're almost remotely controlling the plant using these web technologies. This taught me a lot about, we were mature at the development stage by this point, but it taught me a lot about kind of this synergy between business and technology that can happen if all the pieces come together at the right time. And I think that's what we want to find. Now, this story isn't so beautiful in the scheme of things. I don't know if everybody remembers the hype around Internet of Things that was happening around 2008 and built infrastructure. There was a major movement that was happening, right? I see some nodding heads, so some people remember. 2008 seems so long ago now. We had the opportunity to organically grow and do some small acquisitions in the built infrastructure space, these buildings. So imagine every light has an IP address and all the systems that are controlling ventilation, security, fire and life safety. Imagine if all of those could come together and talk to each other in a concerted sort of way. This is what we were trying to do, is that, IT's been very successful. We've had good luck in some of our other initiatives. We believe that the built infrastructure world is going to collide with IT, and we're going to have a common language across platforms. We got very excited about it and spent a lot of money. So we aligned with a company out of California that was eventually acquired by a big player in the networking field. And so we thought we were in a home run. We thought everything's wonderful, let's just keep going. And we had a lot of excitement. But that's where I learned what adoption curves are in a very hard way. Because adoption curves are interesting. You kind of have this initial hype cycle and real big bubble, and then what they talk about is this devastating crash, right? And then the technology really becomes adopted. So we were pre-crash when we were doing this. So unfortunately, at the financial level, it hurt because the product was pulled by this major network player. The reason for the business had, lost a lot of its momentum and its steam. And it's a very difficult thing. But for Kent and his little IT department, he learned technology adoption curves are very important things. Now, this applies to the cloud because is the cloud early? Should we all just wait another 5 years before we start to use it, right? Would be the thought process and a lot of business brains like where I operate. So that's one of the experiences within the Robinson world. This is where now I move to the cloud discussions, because I wanted to give you a little bit of a background about who we are. There was a lot of factors that allowed us almost 4 years ago to go, we're going to Amazon. I think the biggest one was this physical move that we had. And we had all this physical equipment that I was feeling like I couldn't control anymore. And it just finally said, you know what? If I could get rid of this physical equipment, so it's like a physical reality. I just want to get rid of it. I'm going to go anywhere. So my confidence level for moving to the cloud was more based upon my desire to avoid all the work I had over on the other side maintaining this equipment. The other thing that had happened is that some of the traditional IT players had done a little bit of silly games with us on licensing. And it was like, why are you guys doing this to us? We've been your fans for 10 years. And it's like, I don't want to have anything more to do with you. Now, we're an entrepreneurial company, so if you piss us off, we won't, that's it, you're done, right? We'll move on to something else. Some companies have a little bit of a longer kind of span that they'll tolerate some of the behavior. So that was another thing that caused us to go, you know what? We want to get away from the traditional method of IT networking. So we did move to the cloud. 2012 was when it started. 2013 was when it was operating. And I wish I had taken more pictures back then of server infrastructure, because now I wish I had them, but it's really not that sexy, right? So I understand why we don't take the pictures. But that's one of the racks that we had in our Richmond Hill location that got moved entirely into the Amazon infrastructure. So I have had the question before, why did you go to Amazon? In 2012, if you wanted to do an infrastructure move, Amazon really was the only choice at that point. Everybody else was more focusing on what I would call platform type play. And I think Amazon, to their credit, allowed us to say, we just want to improve how we're operating, and we're just going to move sideways into the Amazon cloud. Now, this is what really made me realize, oh, this is good. So once we had moved into Amazon, we had been there almost a year. How many people remember the 2013 ice storm? Yeah, that was a big deal. We were, some parts of Toronto, I think we were out of power for several days, right? Was there anybody here that was like a 2 or 3 day power outage? Yeah, okay, I see 10 hands, maybe 15. You know, in the old administrative world, this is really bad, because my UPS that I spent all this money on and I'm not confident that it's actually gonna work, really is only gonna work for half an hour, best case scenario. And this ice storm was days, right? The other thing is that rack that you saw with all the complexity, there was like 40 virtual machines running in there, and I wasn't entirely sure what was the exact order I had to fire those up in order for all the systems to talk to each other correctly, so I was a little afraid of restarting it at any point in time when we had it. The problem with an ice storm, it goes down hard, comes up a little bit, and then goes down again. Comes up, and the poor power quality, and then goes down again. So these are very damaging at the IT level. I was so happy. I stayed home for Christmas. I had no concerns whatsoever, because everything was in Amazon, right? I felt very bad for all those poor guys that had to drive into Toronto without the stoplights working on icy roads in order to gracefully protect their equipment from this fluctuating power thing, right? We got to get from the physical reality of IT, move it to the cloud infrastructure. This is, you're not intended to read this to copy Eric and what he was saying. But the darker blue arrows are what we initially used. We only started with about 3 things within Amazon. That allowed us to move everything over sideways. But one of the things about Amazon that's really impressed me, and I think cloud in general is impressive, but Amazon in particular has been innovating at a very rapid rate, is that we're using 14, and I think, you know, if I asked our group, it might be 16 different services now within Amazon. When I did the initial move, that wasn't the reason I moved, but thank you. It's wonderful. They're really good. The other piece here, and then I've projected this, the dark bars that are looking towards the future are what I've projected. But if you go backwards, this is what Amazon talks about, their rapid pace of significant improvement within their product portfolio. And so those are actual Amazon numbers up to 2015, right? 720 significant product announcements. That's a lot of work. They're working really hard. But if you project how that's kind of curving up, I'm betting a month from now, or actually less than a month, at AWS reInvent, we're going to check my number. My projection is 1,008 major improvements this year. Eric, can you break the news? Is that what it is? Yeah, he's not saying. Like this is big scale, spinning at a very rapid pace. But if you project to 2018, which is that 2,000 major improvements, this does a couple things. First of all, it makes me feel like I can't possibly keep up. Our organization is using Amazon, we're very happy with Amazon, but we're also now very happy that we've got a partner that we can leverage within the Amazon space, because we can't keep up with 2,000 major improvements. I'd be reading Amazon announcements all day long, every day, just to try to keep up. So one of the things I would encourage to enterprise customers like us, you gotta have a partner that you can rely on to have cross-organizational experience and allow you to have somebody else that's reading all this and maintaining all this altitude within the space, right? Partners are critical. The other thing, though, is that I would argue you want to move to the cloud and you don't know why, because in 2018, improvement number 1251 is going to be critical to your business. I don't know what 1251 is. It might be 1252, depends which one they announce first, but that's why you got to get into the cloud. And that's totally contrary to how a lot of people think about, you know, IT, you know, how do I reduce cost? No, it's you got to prepare yourself for what could happen. So this is me looking at Robinson now. And I remember, because I used to assemble the hardware, right? I used to install the operating systems. I used to physically move the equipment and plug it in. So we were all the way down to the hardware stack, which many companies still are. So hardware, software, application, and then hopefully what you do gets used. In 2013, when we moved to Amazon, hardware kind of got slid sideways, and I didn't have that blinking yellow light to worry about anymore. It was a major improvement. But we started to move up to platform as a service, right? RDS is one of the very interesting ones, I think, for us in the Amazon space, but there's many others. And then I think what we also began to realize is software as a service, if you can do it correctly, is exactly what we want. Because I'm not sure I even want to maintain infrastructure as a service. Like, why should I be concerned about operating systems, or or things like that. Really what I want to worry about is how is this person reporting the work that they've done? How do they get that safety video correctly? How does our customer contact us, right? And what do they see? So this is why we want to move up this stack. And if you look at 2015 now, we've done very well. There's some aggressive moves that we've made. But the other interesting thing is our traditional IT position, we only have one IT administrator now. We used to have a team of them, right, in the scheme of things. And he's, for the most part, supporting cell phones, right? Whereas before, there was a lot of IT traditional admin work. But what we do have are business process people now. We've got a director of business process that didn't exist before. There's 3 business process engineers that report to them because they're very interested in what we do, which Eric, I think you pointed this in one of your slides also, is that the movement to the cloud has allowed us to be free of IT and not worry about it, but at the same time, use a more powerful IT than we've ever had before and think about how we're going to change our business. So this is the steps that we took. Now, Google came into the equation from the mobile side of things. If Amazon hadn't been such a home run, we probably wouldn't have taken as aggressive a Google position as what we had. But what I realized is that this cloud thing is not what it appears. It's much bigger than the word cloud. And once you immerse yourself in it, it's like, whoa, this is really something. So that's when the second foot fell, and I said, what's this mobile thing? We all take it for granted because our phones just work, but it's a big deal. There's a lot going on. So Google was about the mobile positioning, Android and Chrome OS. The other thing we did, and some people might refer to it as the Empire from Star Wars, we aligned aggressively with SAP. But the SAP products we aligned with were software as a service products. This isn't traditional SAP where you're running some sort of big implementation within your own environment. This is all because of the initial step into the Amazon cloud and our orientation. I'm not going to talk about this too long, but the big purple bubble on the side is Android's yearly shipments worldwide and the percentage of programmable compute power that represents. This is an important kind of document to me because this starts to pull along this idea of the collision between cloud and mobile. In 1999 and 2001, when I had that initial web document, the whole world was PC. And many of our brains right now are these PC brains. We still see the world through personal computer mindsets. Where's the keyboard, where's the mouse? But the truth is, worldwide, there's billions and billions of phones being sold every year. We're in a post-PC reality now, and we need to get into a position that we can fully support mobile. Asimco, look him up, that's his Twitter, Horace, very smart fellow, tracks both the auto industry and mobile in the scheme of things. This is an example of a mobile app, and what I'm trying to show here is how this is beginning to change the shape of what Robinson actually does. Some people refer to it as digitalization. And then there's a second one here, the implant logistics trailer tracking. I go through those fast because what I want to get to is this point. When we combine cloud and mobile and what we do as a business, we're in a whole different world. I think how Robinson earns its living is about to change within these auto plants. We're an outsourced services provider, but if you think about the way Uber has kind of impacted our concept of city logistics and taxis, imagine the service delivery within an auto plant and the complexity associated with that if you could Uberify that type of service delivery. This means every person in the organization needs to participate in some sort of mobile cloud information platform. In the old world, reaching all these blue-collar workers, you tended to only reach the supervisory level. You didn't reach the actual worker and what they were doing. When we combine cloud and mobile, we begin to actually change the concept of the shape and what the business does. Once again, from an enterprise level, that's what I think is your customers potentially within this space, their business itself is changing and what's going to happen because of the tools that are being deployed. That's how powerful cloud and mobile combined are. This is a big question, right? And we learned this in our 2008, is that we were absolutely right that there's going to be a convergence of built infrastructure and a breakdown of proprietary networks to support more of an internet-enabled building systems, energy management, safety, and all those type of things. But we were wrong on the when equation, right? We were right that it was going to happen. We were just wrong on the when. The reason I mention this, though, is I get a lot of people that are risk adverse and they're not moving aggressively. Our general position is that you should move bold and you should move fast towards the cloud. This isn't the same as what we ran into in 2007. This is a whole different level of momentum. And don't be shy, because you're right. Do it, and do it aggressively. This leveling up, it's kind of a reference to Mario, I guess, the people that do Nintendo, But leveling up in it, don't just stay on that one level and bounce back and forth and jump over the same barrels. Try to get up to the next level. I did not fully understand the impact that the move into the cloud and Amazon would do for us until we actually got there. You got to do it. You got to go into that space. The other thing, though, and I'm still facing this today because of these PC brains that we all have, it's hard. You get so much resistance. I asked all our existing suppliers, we're going to be moving into the cloud. Can you help us? And they all went, what? Why are you doing that? Right? And there was no help. There was active resistance. The status quo is very real if you want to move into these environments. Luckily, it's breaking down quite a bit now, because one of the big ones I got when I said, we're going to move everything, they said, well, aren't you worried about security? and now I'm like, the most secure place to be is the cloud, and everybody's increasingly believing that, right? That's not questioned anymore. But 2012, 2013, and that was kind of the question that was going on. And I think that shows how much things have improved and how obvious it's starting to become. So the transition is happening in the scheme of things. But internally within the organization, status quo is very difficult, because it's not about technology anymore. It's about the adoption and the utilization of what you're trying to do. So status quo reflects the psychology of the people that you want to reach. This is another thinker that I would encourage you to look up, and I bet many of you have already stumbled across him because he's quite popular. Benedict Evans is a mobile guru in the scheme of things. But what I love is how, this is so true. Think BlackBerry, right? Good Canadian example. They were so successful within their space that they were off the cliff and doomed, hovering in the air, but people just couldn't believe it, right? So it's like their whole foundation had been taken out from underneath them in the scheme of things, and it was inevitable that they were going to drop. But how many companies just followed them right off the edge of that cliff saying, oh no, everything's fine, look, there's BlackBerry. And then, the transition has to happen. So don't be a lemming, right? Be confident and be bold in what you're trying to do. The other one, and this one's a little politically sensitive, so I want to be careful how I phrase it, but we've been operating in a reality for the last 20 years that's been a very successful reality and a force and an economic force. But I would say that the transition to cloud, there was a real financial improvement for us. This is what you would call gravy. We saved a lot of money by moving to cloud. So that savings is how businesses make a lot of decisions. I'm going to move to the cloud because I'm going to save this money. So be careful when you're escaping the cage that you're in and you're skimming that gravy, you're taking that gravy, that you use it for a profound change, one that is pure cloud, and not one for somebody that's going, oh yes, we get that cloud thing now, so yeah, we're cloud too, right? And so what you do is you steal the potential savings and apply it in a place that just moves you to a bigger cage. So I would encourage you really want to be true cloud, something that didn't exist post 2005, I'd say. And even when we're looking at SaaS, we consider an old SaaS to be something that's more than 3 years old, right? Like you have to be kind of forward-looking in the positioning. This is the other thing I would say, is that for enterprises like us that are moving into the environment, it's like going from black and white to Technicolor. It's like when Dorothy, walked out and she just landed on the witch, and all of a sudden, rather than in the dusty kind of prairie type space, she was in full color Technicolor world. And I love the Home Depot reference, right? The idea that I opened the door just to move my infrastructure as a service is like, what's all this, right? And it's all magical. How does this work? Well, I don't have to worry about it. I can just use it. Like it's really a powerful experience. The other reason I kind of like this picture is because I do collect a lot of vinyl. And that's a 1956 LP from a 1939 movie running on a 1982 turntable. It's actually a 2007 needle, but it's running through a 1976 Marantz amplifier, which I use for my web meetings. So it's so tactile and so fun. And I think if we think about technology, it's interesting that I can put on a 60-year-old record and it sounds better today than it did 60 years ago. Unfortunately, in the IT space, we haven't quite got that longevity yet, but I think as technology architects, we should all be thinking about that, the nature of time and how what we're doing and what we're using as our tools will progress over time. 3 years on, and I think we're actually approaching 4 now, the cloud move was so critical to Robinson's direction and its future, and we're very, very happy. We're saving money every day, but more importantly, it's the strategic position that we've ended up in. And this is why I would say to organizations like us, don't be shy. Go full force into it, because it's what you got to do to prepare yourself. And I think that's it. Like I hope I was a good example of a mid-sized enterprise customer, and I hope some of the technology brains now are beginning to think about how to reach people like us in the room, and I bet you next year this is probably going to be twice as large, Jared. Very good. Thanks, guys.